Good afternoon and welcome to our Jobseeker Chat Series. I'm Louise Triance from UK Recruiter and we work with S1 Jobs. S1jobs.com is Scotland's #1 job site, and we're delighted to be working with S1 Jobs to provide their 1 million seekers a new interactive way to access advice and guidance to help them succeed in their career. And today I'm really pleased to be joined by two fabulous guests. We have Karen and we have Daniel, and they will introduce themselves in a moment. Collectively, I think we have about 45 years plus recruitment experience. I don't actively recruit anymore, but Karen and Daniel are on an absolute daily basis. If you're watching this show live, you can ask a question or make a comment in the sidebar, which you'll see down the right where I've written that we were starting. If you're watching this on Facebook Live, then feel free to leave a comment there. And if you're watching it after the show and you want to get in touch with us, please find me on LinkedIn. I am Louise Triance. I'm happy to connect with you and to answer any other questions you may have. So today we're talking about how to gain a competitive advantage in your job search. And there's 4 main elements of that we'll cover in this 35-40 minute show. So before we get going, Karen, do you want to introduce yourself and then I'll go to Daniel?
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Karen Stewart. I am the MD of a niche technical recruitment firm called N20. We're Glasgow based and I have just over 10 years experience in recruitment.
Fabulous, thank you. And Daniel?
Hi everyone, so I'm Daniel Harris. I work for an engineering design consultancy called AECOM. I'm their head of talent acquisition. So we are based all over the UK really. In Scotland we have a couple of offices in Edinburgh and Glasgow. We're also based, I think, in 2 or 3 other cities in Scotland. But yeah, we're global. We recruit about 1,300 people annually. And I've got about 13 years experience in recruitment.
Fabulous. So for job seekers, we're really lucky because tonight we've got somebody with us who works agency side and someone who works corporate, which is 2 different viewpoints of what is essentially the same actual process. So when we're talking about gaining a competitive advantage, getting a job, applying for a job isn't all about your CV. It's not the only thing a potential employer has to go on. So I think that it's a bit of a broader picture than, you know, in the old days you'd see an advert in a paper or on a job board and you just send your CV in. I think there's more to do. There's more of a challenge. And I think that possibly the first thing you should do, maybe even before you find the right job to apply for, is your research. So Karen, you're dealing with job seekers once they've found a job they want to apply to through you. But what would you recommend they do around the research piece, either before they apply or once they found a job they like?
I think the research piece is absolutely vital. In the 10 years I've been in recruitment, the landscape's completely changed. It's very competitive, and employers do look for people who know themselves, have taken experience from past companies, past roles, know what they want to do, know what they're passionate about doing, and also understand the type of culture that they would potentially thrive in. So gone are the days where you should blanket your CV and just send it to every company and hope for the best. I think it's hugely important that you look at for a sector that you're interested in, are passionate about, and get involved in understanding who are the major players, who are the bigger companies, you know, whose companies have values that sit with yours, and start to investigate into those type of businesses.
Okay, so that's about researching the type of role you want to do, who some of those major players are, and just really understanding the space you want to be in. And I guess that can be regardless of the seniority level you're at, that you can do that. That's not out of reach to any job seeker, is it?
No, I think obviously there'll be people who are more experienced that can take from previous roles and past experiences. People who are new to the job market, there may be an element of trial and error. They may think they're passionate or enjoy a certain industry, and once they get in, discover it's not for them, and that's okay. Everybody's been there. But to start off from a point of something they think they want to be interested in and understand more of, it comes across in your application process that this is something you actually want to do rather than just needing a job.
No, absolutely. And Daniel, what would you add to that? Anything around that research piece?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really do echo a lot of what Karen said there. I mean, there's some really great points there. I mean, things like nowadays with technology that's available, it's so easy to keep in touch with or sort of keep updated on companies and what they're doing. And before you even start applying for roles, I mean, I would always say to candidates, list maybe 15, 20 companies that you really do, associate with, you admire their brand, their companies that, you would really love to work for. And then set up things like Google alerts. I've got one for AECOM. I've also got one for all of our competitors as well, just so I know what they're doing in the market. But every day I get a message from Google in my email telling me all the news stories about AECOM. I can also put on there around, if I wanted to look for a head of recruitment role, for example, or if I was a mechanical engineer and I wanted to look for a mechanical engineer role, I can set a Google alert saying mechanical engineer AECOM. And then if that's a company that I want to work for, I'll get an alert when a role comes up. So there's lots of things you can do now with technology to really take some of the heavy lifting out of your research. You can always have that information sent to you.
Yeah, so getting a head start on other job seekers, knowing who you really want to work for and getting that information about when they're starting to recruit. I mean, when we talk about research, the other thing which I think is really, really important is if you identify where you want to work, is working out which of the sites which are going to be advertising those jobs. So if you are a mechanical engineer and you want a mechanical engineering job and you want to work in a certain geographic area, then just doing a simple Google search for that and seeing which recruitment agencies come back in that search and which job boards come back in that search. And then knowing either to try to connect with that agency or to keep an eye out or to look at those employers which come up as recruiting a lot. Or if you're going to use a job board like S1 Jobs, where you can actually put a job alert in there. So you put in the criteria you're looking for. Now, lots of other job seekers use job boards as well, but getting information about those jobs as soon as they come on the market means that you will have a little bit more time to prepare yourself, which was the second piece around the research I was thinking of, is this research you should do once you have a job that you want to apply for. So Daniel, obviously you're hiring people all the time. What advice would you give to a job seeker who's found a job they want to apply for with you? What's the next steps?
So what I'll do then, once you've found the role, I mean, and you've gone through the job description, you've realised that it's right for you, you could probably go in. There's so much you can do now, find out about organisations. Websites like Glassdoor, for example, really do give you a peek behind the curtain of what's going on within an organisation. You can find out about salary information, what's the average salary for certain roles within the company. Make sure that aligns to what you would expect. You can get reviews from people that work for the organisation, people that are doing the job already. They can tell you what it's like. You can then understand if it is the sort of culture and the environment that you want to work for. You can also, find out all about their values and their, certain content they're putting out. It's all there. It's all readily available. So I'd say do lots of research, find out about the brand, find out about the salary, find out what the people working there say, and then go through and make the application. It's, there's lots of different ATSs out there. Companies, although it doesn't seem like it sometimes, they try to make their applications as streamlined and as simple as possible. I've spent lots and lots of time with the technology teams at AECOM here trying to make it user-friendly. There's always going to be frustrations there, unfortunately, because you need to log in, there's security, there's data protection, there's policies that you'll need to read through. That will always be there, unfortunately. But yeah, make the application. If there's anything that you don't understand, there's generally going to be a talent acquisition team at the end of a phone or an email address that you can contact with any questions. So go through and make the application. Okay,
and I'd like to in a minute come back to that point around when you apply and making further contact. But so we'll definitely come back to that. So Karen, when you have jobs that you advertise for a client, is there other stuff that you think that as a job seeker we could do as well as just sending our CV to you? Because obviously, you're brokering that process. Yeah. What would you like to see job seekers do? What could they do?
Well, quite often it's very different from your side, Daniel, where it'll be a branded advert. Quite often from an agency side, the advertisement can be quite generic. So candidates don't know who they're applying to. candidates who can be more proactive in terms of sending a really strong covering letter outlining their skills in relation to the role that's outlined in the advert certainly comes across. The people who maybe potentially call up when they've sent their CV and follow that process through show that they're more proactive. How we also like to try and operate, though, is we like to meet candidates on a regular basis without a job in mind, so that actually we get to understand what a candidate wants. It's about building, I suppose, our network, them building theirs, and tying that in, that when the role comes in, you can actually pick up the phone and be proactive towards that person and say, I've got something perfect for you because...
And I think that's a really, really key point for job seekers. I speak to a lot of job seekers where the frustration is that recruitment consultancies will not have conversations with them. And I think it's just about finding the people who will. And they're the people who are much more likely to find you that right job. Because if you work with a recruiter like Karen, Karen's going to get to know you and going to get to know which are the right vacancies to run past you. And we've done, this is our 5th one of these shows, and all the recruiters we've had on these shows have been recruiters who will take the time to have conversations. So don't be disheartened when you end up, sending a CV to an agency and a recruiter won't even speak to you. There are great HR people out there. There are great recruitment agencies out there, and it is worth the time to find those, so people who will help you through this process. So thanks, Karen. So the next point on our gaining competitive advantage is around building your network. Now, we've got a question from Ian in the sidebar, and I'm thinking perhaps we'll just come to that first, and then we'll move on to the networking. So Ian asks, if you're looking to move into a new sector, are there any tips to make yourself competitive when judged against people who are already in the sector? And this is a really, really tricky one. For a role where perhaps there's, 50 applications. And so if I could come to you first, Daniel, as a hiring manager, you're looking through these applications and you see so many people whose experience is aligned. How can someone like Ian make his CV stand out?
I think the first thing to think about is why you want to move into that sector. What is it that's appealing for you? What is it that are there challenges that you believe you'll be able to meet? Is there something you're very passionate about? Something that really inspires you? And then obviously you can tell that story in your application, whether that's through your cover letter or through questions that are prompted through the application process. The second point I think is really key around it's transferable skills. And we've been doing some work recently with veterans and reservists from the military, and we're looking at bringing in quite a few project managers into our organisation. And we appreciate that people coming out of the military, whether it's veterans or reservists, they have lots of transferable skills that would be very, very easily applied to a project management role. So it's identifying the transferable skills and then making sure that you sell those through your application. You align that to why you want to go into that sector. You show what you're passionate about, what inspires you. And ultimately, it's always going to be difficult. But I think if you follow those 2 tips, that certainly gives you a good start. I think we're going to come on to networking as well, which is also an element there. Network with people already in that sector and make sure that you're visible within that sector. But I think we'll move on to that one shortly.
Yeah, no, and I think that will be the third part of what you're suggesting to Ian is that networking piece. Karen, have you got any other quick tips for Ian?
No, I just completely agree with Daniel. It's going to be super tough. Many recruiters and companies will be hugely tunnel visioned and look for somebody with X amount of years experience. In saying that, it's really nice and refreshing when we do get people to look outside the box, look at the transferable skills, and the candidate absolutely thrives. But I would completely agree. Look at the initiatives that have been run in the sector you want to join, try and get involved. Look at how do you give something back into that sector, and you start to be recognised as somebody who's passionate about that industry. And again, that ties into the networking piece that we're going to come on to.
Okay, yeah, and I think
one more thing as well, if that's okay, Louise. Just something that's popped into my mind as we were talking there. Diversity is massive at the moment in terms of in the corporate world. Everybody is talking about diversity and inclusion and looking at ways to to improve the diversity of their workforce. So this is something now that diversity, not just diversity of background, of gender, of religion, faith, but also diversity of thought. And generally now, people coming from different sectors will bring a different perspective. So if you can use that to your advantage, again, tapping into those transferable skills, but also selling the fact that you are bringing a new perspective, then I think that would be very helpful, very useful as well for you.
Okay. Yeah, so that's about catching the employer's attention and making them just spend another couple of seconds thinking, oh, actually, this might be worth me, spending a bit longer on. Okay, that's great. So the next bit is networking. And I think this is exactly what you were saying here, Ian, is even before you apply for that job, it's about, creating a strong network. Daniel, do you want to carry on with this theme?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So networking is key, I think. It's something that is, I'm always trying to expand and grow my network. And going back to the point from what Ian mentioned around moving into a different sector, I think it's even more important at that point, because if you're a mechanical engineer and you want to move into an environmental type position, if you start attending events within that space, if you start meeting and connecting with people on LinkedIn that work within those industries and areas, then ultimately you'll start to contribute to conversations. You'll start to build that network up, and then people already working in those roles will start to recommend you to and refer you to their employers, and that can help give you that foot in. So I'd say networking really is important.
Okay, and Karen, obviously again, networking with recruitment businesses is one thing, but what else would you recommend to job seekers around that network?
I agree with Daniel. I think it's important for a job seeker to probably connect with 3 or 4 strong recruitment agencies in that sector and get to know the recruiters, get the recruiters to understand them and what they want, and try and choose 4 different companies who work with different client base, so that they're all actively doing something different for you, instead of all sending you to the same clients. Joining groups and discussion points on LinkedIn that are relevant to the sector is huge. And, as Daniel says, the whole diversity piece is huge. So most businesses are running projects on diversity, and that can be inclusive, so you can go and try and join in and volunteer and give something back to these businesses. And again, they start to recognise you as an individual who wants to give back, who's involved, wants to get to understand more about it. And it just sets you above the other candidates that are looking to break in.
And that's really, really useful advice, well, Cam, because that's about building a network, not just online. And I'm terrible for thinking about networks as in who we're connected to on LinkedIn, but it is about building a network in real life as well, isn't it? And if you can get projects or campaigns which are in the space you are already in or want to be in, then that will build your real life network very strongly. Daniel, I've got a question for you about networks. So say I wanted to apply for a job with you. How appropriate would it be after I've sent my application in to think, I'm going to have a quick look on LinkedIn, I'm going to find everyone who works at this organisation, I'm going to connect with them all. Is that a foolish thing for me to do as a job seeker? What's your own thoughts on that?
I think you've got to be calculated in the way that you approach it. So you've got to, another thing that's important about networking is always thinking about adding value. So what I don't think here, or what I don't like to see, is when people just aggressively go out on somewhere like LinkedIn, add lots and lots of connections, without really putting any introduction, not asking why they're connecting with the individual. People are getting more and more, I suppose, conscious about who they are networking and connecting with. So I think that it's important to have a reason there. And I would probably say, rather than, and we spoke about this briefly earlier, Louise, I would probably say it's more, I suppose, suitable to go and connect with people already working in the role rather than going straight to the hiring manager. Because if, again, we keep going back to mechanical engineer, it's just what's on my mind at the moment. But if I was applying for a mechanical engineer role in the Edinburgh office, and I put my application in, then I can go and run a search, look at who works in Edinburgh at the moment, who's a mechanical engineer. I could then send them a connection saying, look, I'm really interested in opportunities at AECOM. I put an application through. I'd love to hear more about what challenges you experience day to day, or what you're currently working on at the moment. Get some insight into it. Be prepared that not everyone's going to respond to you. It's not that you might not hear back from people, but at the same time, there are people that will. I get lots of people connecting with me on LinkedIn. I do my very best to try and respond to to people. I can't get back to everybody, but ultimately I'll do my best, and you'll be surprised at the number of people that will come back, and they'll give you some insight. And then, when you do go through to whether you're having a conversation with the recruiter or hopefully you go through to interview, there's some insight that you can share, and you can say, I understand that the Edinburgh office are currently working on this specific project. I've researched it. I'd love to be able to find out more about XYZ. And it can really kind of form the basis of a conversation when you get to meet the company. So I'd probably say connect more with the people in the roles than the hiring manager, but don't let me put you off connecting with the hiring manager still. If you feel it's appropriate and you do want to have that conversation, maybe you know people in the organisation already and you can use them as a hook to get in. If you feel comfortable doing that, then still, I don't think it's frowned upon, but at the same time, it's what works for individuals, I suppose.
And I think that, you said about the number of roles you recruit a year. I think that as a job seeker, we think this role is the role that we're going for. And maybe we don't see some of the other challenges that HR or hiring managers have, which is why it's difficult not to take that sort of rejection personally if you don't get the job. But also if you can maybe bear that in mind when you're trying to connect with people on LinkedIn, that an HR manager, maybe they'll be involved in your interview, but they're going to be involved in an awful lot of other ones. So like you suggest, connecting around it might be slightly more easy. Karen, again, really different in a recruitment agency. So you've got a job. So you're hiring for Daniel. So you are the broker between Daniel and the candidate. So as a job seeker, is it okay for me when I'm working with a recruitment agency to start getting in touch with the hiring managers? Does that make it look like I'm trying to circumnavigate the recruiter? What would your advice be in those situations?
It has happened from time to time, and it is usually frowned upon in the sense of, a Daniel would be paying me to broker the relationship and the shortlist to him. It can be deemed that you're maybe trying to wriggle round past the recruiter. However, if once the candidate, has been presented and they're going through the process, if both parties are comfortable with that, that's absolutely fine. But if the agency have been instructed, I would always say go through the agency, go through that process with them.
Yeah, and I think that's really difficult for job seekers because it's tricky not to see the recruiter as perhaps something holding you back, but it's really important to use the recruitment consultant in the best possible way in the relationship. And if you have a really good, honest relationship with someone like they would with you, Karen, you could say, oh, shall I connect with them on LinkedIn? Or maybe wait until after that first interview and take lead from the recruiter. And I think that when a company is working well with a recruiter, they'll both know what's appropriate with that organisation. And maybe if you were hiring for Daniel, you'd know that Daniel's totally up for any contact at all, and that would be okay. So my advice to recruiters would be to ask the agency that you're working with before going direct to a hiring manager, because typically there's a reason why they're using a recruitment agency, and that might be a time issue. Or might be a lack of expertise, but there's lots of different reasons. So I want to move on now to building your personal brand. And I think that can feel like something which only certain types of job seekers should do. I think that personal brand 10 years ago, that would make no sense to any of us what we're talking about. But personal brand now is about having a profile in the space. And I think that as a job seeker, it could be relevant to you whatever level you're at. Karen, what do you like to see job seekers doing to help build that brand?
I love to see somebody proactive online to build their brand. So again, it's about setting up discussion topics that are interesting, that gets people involved. That they post articles that are relevant to the industry, that they look at potentially inward investment that's been coming into the sector and start discussion points on that. And it just really shows somebody who actually cares, who wants to get involved and do more than just their job, that they're passionate about it. And I think the personal branding can really tie into your sort of your personal, your Facebook pages, things like that. That's really used these days in recruitment. So yeah, as recruiters, we will go and check your Facebook and various other things and make sure your personal brand is presentable and comfortable for us to then present you to our client base.
Yeah, and actually that's a really good point. I'm thinking about creating a really strong personal brand, but just actually making sure that your personal brand isn't going to be a turn off is actually quite important. So what Daniel, what channels would you recommend that job seekers should be using to kind of give the right impression of themselves, and the true impression?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think with personal brand, it's one that really should be managed, all year round, not just when you're looking for a role. I mean, it really is something that's so key now and important. It's, and as Karen touched on there, it's sharing content that's relevant to the industry that you work within. But also, I suppose it goes back again to what I mentioned about the networking piece. I mean, we all have New Year's resolutions, but I wanted to be a lot more active on LinkedIn, and it's about adding value to other people, and that's really how you can grow your brand, because then other people, if you can help people comment on posts that they make, and you can add valuable insight, valuable content to, for example, if Louise puts a blog post out there and I have a read through and I have an opinion on that post and I share something with Louise is going to be very, I'm sure she'll be very thankful. Hopefully she'll be thankful that I've commented on her blog post, and then in future when I post things, Louise will comment on me, and then Louise's followers will see what I'm saying, and that will grow my personal brand, because more and more people are seeing what I'm doing. I mean, I've tried as a New Year's resolution to try and comment on 3 posts a day on LinkedIn so that I'm active. I'm woefully failing at the moment. I am putting content out there that I think is right for the sort of people that I want to be connecting with. But, I would just say, get yourself out there, try and be as helpful as you can to other people. And then at that point, your network will grow, and things will start to come back to you. When you start posting things, when you start trying to ask for advice on certain things, people will start coming back to you and commenting on what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think that what you just said there about all year round is really, really key. So it's about having a strong presence, so that they don't. So an employer looks at your, your Twitter feed, and it looks really great, but you scroll back 3 weeks and you've literally done nothing but post pictures of your lunch. So you need to have that ongoing presence. The engagement piece, as you said, Daniel, is really, really important. And this is a really, really key tip, is to find influencers in your space and genuinely engage with them. So if you can find people who are well known in the sector you're looking to get a job in, and build something of an online relationship with them, then, as you say, when they comment on your posts, broader people will see that. And then the other thing I wanted to say was, depending on what your job is, using all the tools. So using Instagram potentially, if you're going for a design job, have a beautiful Instagram profile which is work appropriate, bit of fun in there as well. Or Twitter. I think less people use Twitter successfully to position themselves, but it's great for seeing what's going on in your space. So just make sure you're using the right tools that your potential employer will find you.
Instagram is a really good one, because at the moment people don't think Instagram will be the last place you would go to if you're looking for opportunities and jobs. But the great thing with Instagram is now most brands, most big corporate businesses will have an Instagram page, and we have a couple on that are open there. One is just around AECOM and all of our projects, so there's lots of information there, just showing images of what we're doing and what we do day to day. We also have one that's around our corporate social responsibility, so all of the work we do to support developing nations, and we're going out building villages in Africa, and it shares some of the stories of what our staff are doing. And then we also have a Life at AECOM Instagram page, which gives you again, it's that peek behind the curtain of what goes on. What do our staff do? What are they doing? What sport and social events do we have across the organisation? Is it somewhere, a culture that you would enjoy working? Yeah. So that's out there as well. So you can get lots and lots of insight into the organisation, if you're following and you're on these social media sites.
And that's great for preparing for that interview, isn't it? Is that we talked in a previous show about how you meant to know what the culture's like before you go in for that interview. And if you can find things on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter with photos of the type of things the business are doing, the type of people in the business, that can really help. And Karen, when people are applying for jobs through you, do you see people actually highlight their social profiles on CVs? Is it something we should be doing? Should we be linking to it all?
I think it's becoming more and more popular. We are seeing links to LinkedIn, sometimes Facebook, and as you're seeing, the likes of Instagram and Twitter. I think it's an important thing. It's as I said, the landscape has changed, and we do look for that all-round candidate now. We want to see what they're giving back to society and what they can bring to the business, and will they fit with the company values as well. So I do think, people have removed date of births and things that they used to put in the CV, and you know, it's nice to refresh the CV and bring some new information, and it's certainly something that would save us having to go and search if it's there for us to look at.
Yeah, no, I like that. Okay, so this is the fourth thing, the final thing we can do in giving ourselves a competitive advantage, and this is around the application. Now, I'm going to come to you first, Karen, about sending in the CV, the cover letter. I've just touched on whether maybe you'd link to some of your personal branding, but how, in a nutshell, how can you make that CV and cover letter express you in the best way possible? But what can we do around that?
I think the CV, it's important that you spend time on it. I can see candidates that potentially rush the CV, and that comes across. Particularly my sector, manufacturing and engineering, certain candidates could probably apply for 3 or 4 different roles using 4 different skills that they've acquired over that period of time. And I always advise them to spend time creating 3 fantastic CVs. Yeah. That are tailored to suit whatever you're applying for. Quite often you see 6, 7, 8 pages long and as much information as you can get into that CV. And as you scroll down, you tend to switch off. And I think it's really important that you get the buzzwords, the skills, the experience and the achievements, you know, as near to the top as you can get it. So that potentially means tailoring your CV and having different ones for the different roles you're going to apply. It's not telling lies at all. It's actually just removing what's not so relevant for that particular role and highlighting what the key skills would be that you can bring.
Yeah, okay, I absolutely agree. So, yeah, we're not talking about removing a job, we're talking about the level of responsibilities and achievements and what you've actually done, making sure that they are showcasing the things relevant to that job. And this is where you can use that research you've done to know what the company's looking for, what type of things are going to most interest them. And I think that getting the interview, then getting the job are the key things. So putting that effort into the CV is really important. Daniel, the actual application process, you touched on the ATS and the actually, you know, sending your CV in, and that can be a bit of a challenge too, I think, for job seekers. What advice would you give around getting that bit right?
So again, Karen touched on optimization of a CV, and as recruiters, so I suppose there's a flip side to this. We're always told by LinkedIn, by Indeed, by S1 Jobs, you know, all the different job boards out there, that when we're advertising our jobs, we need to get as many keywords in there as possible, so that we're then, you know, our jobs then being found by the relevant, you know, by the candidates and the people that are suitable for that role. So it's exactly the same for job seekers. They need to get as many keywords on there as possible, just so that they're, you know, on their LinkedIn profile, but also on their application. I mean, the way that an applicant tracking system works, so when you do hit apply and your application has now gone for that role, for whatever reason, if you're not successful for that position, you will still be on there. You'll be asked to create a profile, and your details will be on their database. So now when we open up a vacancy, we have what we call talent match, and most corporate businesses will have this now, and it will give you a list of profiles or a list of candidates that meet their keywords on their CV aligned to the job description that you've just posted. So we would get maybe 50 or 40 candidates straight away that are pushed through. So if you have your CV optimized, then your candidates will be able to, you know, you'll be able to see the opportunity. You'll be re-engaged by the employer. The other thing I would say with the applicant tracking system, a couple of quick tips, I suppose, when you apply through. The first one is to just don't rely on the CV reader. So when you do apply and all the fields below are auto-populated by your CV, don't just hit next. Double check, because a lot of the time the CV readers are very poor. And the one we use on our technology, it's getting better, and technology companies are always working to improve them. But a lot of the time it doesn't read it properly. So just make sure that the information's pulling through right, because that then will impact future applications and future jobs being targeted for you. The other thing I would say is use a Word CV, not a PDF. For some reason, Word is much more readable in applicant tracking systems than PDFs are. I think it's, I don't know the ins and outs, the technical aspects of it, but for some, we find our CV readers much better. And then finally, I would probably say take photos off as well. There's always a debate around, should you keep a photo on, shouldn't you? But as far as the ATS goes, you know, a computer can't read a photo. So, well, certainly our applicant tracking system can't. So it would just confuse it. So I would suggest take that off and, yeah, Word CVs and put as many keywords on there as possible.
Okay, that's great. I read something recently about there being a resurgence in the number of roles which are asking applicants to send a photo with a CV, but I've not really had any evidence of that, and it does seem a rather strange thing to do. So my advice to job seekers would never to send their CV in the photo in as a matter of course. And sending CVs in Word format, I see so many times job seekers being told to put their CV in PDF format so it can't be tampered with, but no one's tampering with your CV in this process. What you're trying to do is to make sure it gets in front of the hiring manager, representing you in the best way possible. So I think that's great advice. So my final question to you both, I'm going to come to you first, Karen, is because it's completely different whether you're working with an agency or a corporate, is the follow-up. So you've sent your CV off, it's a perfect job, you've put all this effort in. Karen, I've sent my CV to you for a job you're hiring. Do I follow you up? Do I send you an email 4 days later? Do I give you a phone call? What are job seekers meant to do when they're applying for an agency?
I think a follow-up's important. It's actually quite a sad marketplace in terms of follow-ups and feedback. We meet a lot of candidates who tend to be ignored and have been on a regular basis and have had quite a few bad experiences. Everybody should get some feedback, whether it's thank you, you have not been selected, good luck with your spec, and you know, and if people then follow up with that and want to get in-depth feedback, we're more than happy to provide that. So again, it shows that you're proactive and that you actually want the job. And there's a good example, you know, somebody I had rejected for a role phoned me for the feedback. We had a really good stuff. Almost became a debate, but a brilliant debate, which ended in me meeting the candidate and the candidate getting the job. So it shows that certain proactive can lead to more, because I saw the transferables, I saw the personality and thought, wow, you've really got something, let's push you in as a wild card. And it worked. So I do think it's appropriate to follow up, and there's too many black holes out there. It's good to get closure in one way, shape or form.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that the one of the largest complaints I hear from job seekers is this thing about sending their CV into a black hole, and how very, very depressing that is. Because I think when we apply for a job, we all think we're perfect for it, and if we're not, it's good to know why. But in a company like yours, Daniel, where you're recruiting, I don't know, 1,000+ roles a year, how does a job seeker follow up the application?
And I'm really sorry because I missed the first question because the internet cut out a little bit. So I think it was around interview feedback. And
no, it wasn't. No, it's about when you've applied. So on application, you apply for the role, and then do you follow up with a phone call, or do you just have to wait to hope the recruiter comes back to you to say whether you're going forward for interview?
Yeah, and I totally understand and sympathise with people that don't hear back, and it is a very frustrating process if you go through and you do a 15-minute application and then you don't hear back from the employer. I mean, we do try to make a commitment to respond to everybody. We have obviously an automated email that goes out, but it's not a personal. It's not that personal touch. I would probably go back to what we were saying before. It's once you've applied, it's around looking and connecting. Go onto LinkedIn, and if you really are interested in finding out more about that role and who works in it, go and connect with the people on LinkedIn and talk to them and engage with them. You may even find that the person who you connect with will then go and speak to the hiring manager. If it's their manager, they will go and speak to her and say, look, I've been approached by this candidate. They've put an application through. Keep an eye out because we've had an engage on LinkedIn and they're really interested in the role. So it might lead to something else. You may end up speak to the hiring manager before. So I would say be patient with it. With companies, they don't purposely try to ignore you. They will do their very best to come back. If you haven't heard back, and I mean we have this what we call 3-2-1. So we would expect to get back to a candidate within 3 days of an application, 2 days of an interview, and 1 day after an offer. And I would say if you haven't heard back from a company within a week, then really you should follow up with the talent acquisition person. There'll be an email address there, or you can just phone up one of the offices and just say, I've made an application, who would I speak to? And then the receptionist should be able to give you the phone number for where the recruitment team sits. and they can talk to you. But generally speaking, they should come back.
No. And there's two sides to this, is that sometimes if you don't get a response, you could make an assumption that organisation just wasn't right for you. But other times, if you can follow up in one of the ways that either Karen or Daniel has suggested, you might find out that you can then get another opportunity to be seen. So I think it is worth doing that and not just making an assumption that they're a rubbish organisation you don't want to work for. So in our 40-minute session, we've covered the research, the network, the building a personal brand, and the application. And hopefully there's been some really, really great tips in here. I mean, I think that overall, as a job seeker, what you're aiming to do is to solve a problem for an employer. You want the job, but that's what they want you to do. You need to find out what their need is and be that for them. And it is a challenge, and there's a lot of people out there sometimes going for the same jobs. Daniel, have you got one last tip that you would give?
Actually, yeah, there was one thing that just popped into my head, and I can't take credit for this, and I did hear it on another recruitment podcast, but the name escapes me of who said this, but I did think it was really interesting, and I'd be keen to hear what Karen's thoughts are. If and basically what they said was that if you do go for a position, you've had an interview with a corporate business, for whatever reason you don't get the job, some great advice would be to follow up with the company, ask them obviously why you didn't get it and if there's anything you can do to improve. But then at the same time, most big companies, particularly Aecon, we have a list of preferred agencies that we work with. So it would really, and again, Karen, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. It would be great as a job seeker to ask the corporate company, well, are there any specific recruitment agencies in my space you would recommend that I can talk to look at other opportunities? As a job seeker, I would then contact Karen and I'd say to Karen, hi, I've obviously introduced myself and I've been recommended by the employer. You're obviously a preferred supplier for that company. They've recommended you as a preferred supplier of theirs. Can you support me with my job search? It would then be in Karen's interest, as her client has recommended this candidate to them, to then go and support with their job search. And I just found that a really useful and I suppose proactive and productive piece of advice that, but again, I can't think of the name of the person that did say it on their podcast, so I can't take credit for it. But Karen, it'd be interesting to hear what you think of that approach.
I think that's a fantastic approach. It's about partnerships. It's about the network piece that we've already discussed. And from an employer branding point of view, that company might have said, no, thanks, you're not for us for now, but here's someone who can help you. It's a much more positive experience for the candidate at the end result, and if that then leads to them getting a job in the same industry, doing something similar in a great company that works out for them, it's a win-win situation. So, we do work closely with our clients in partnership, and we actually have seen that happen. Karen, can you help this person? They've not been right for us. Are you able to help? And it makes our job easier. They've been vetted, they've been interviewed, they've come to you saying, look, they're good, they're just not quite right. It's working together. I really like the idea.
And it's a fantastic story that, Karen can then come back to her client and say, look, thanks so much for the recommendation. We've managed to place that person. And it's about networking. It's about helping each other out, working in collaboration. So, I just thought that was a very good tip.
No, I love that tip. I'm going to share that with my recruiter audience as well. Karen, any final tips?
Don't put my name again.
No,
it was somebody.
No.
Very modern.
Karen, have you got any final tip for job seekers?
Yes, I do. It's a tough game out there. It's a tough gig, very competitive, and you need to stand above the crowd. You need to be passionate. You need to know what you want. And you really need to go after what you want and show the companies and show the recruiters that you understand who you are and where you want to go. And then they'll be more than happy to help you. There's nothing worse in my line of work when you phone somebody to say, hi, I've found your details, you look fantastic. Are you looking for work at the moment? I'm always looking for work. It just switches you off. You're saying, well, why? Why would you always be looking? What's missing from where you are? So again, that probably was acceptable. It's now becoming less acceptable. And we want to see people who want to network and who understand what they want and who want to give back. Just go above and beyond and the opportunities will be there for you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So thank you very much to S1 Jobs for organising these. Thank you to Daniel and to Karen. And if you've got any questions, like I say, afterwards, please get in touch with me on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to connect you with Daniel and Karen as well. So thanks again, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.